Said my dad was dysfunctional and my sister helped raise me. I grew up in a rough town part of DC and I had to leave the hood on the weekends.
Clifton Powell was 4 years old and his mother was gone. Just like that. Gone. And his father? His father was a functioning alcoholic. A man who got up, went through the motions, but was never really there. Not emotionally, not spiritually. Not in the ways a boy needs his father to be there. So Clifton raised himself. By 7 years old, the boy was raising himself. 7 years old. Most of us at 7 were arguing about what cartoon to watch. Clifton Powell was figuring out survival. He grew up in poverty so real it had a smell. A babysitter's home infested with rats. Not metaphorical rats, not movie rats, actual rats, sharing space with vermin because there was nowhere else to go. And here is what I want you to feel right now. Not just hear, feel, the weight of that. The absence, the quiet terror of a childhood with no safety net, no soft place to land, no one to catch you when you fall. And yet, he fell, and he got back up. That is the whole story, really. Everything else is just the details. The neighborhood, Southeast Washington, D.C. in the 1960s and 70s, was not a gentle place. It was a neighborhood that chewed people up. Poverty, violence, dead ends dressed up as futures. It was the kind of place where statistics lived, where numbers became people and people became warnings. And Clifton Powell grew up right in the middle of it. He never saw his father use a bank, not once. Think about what that means. No savings, no safety. No concept that money could be managed, grown, protected, just cash in hand, here today, gone tomorrow. The idea of financial security wasn't just out of reach, it was invisible. It didn't even exist as a concept in his world. His first bank account? He didn't open one until he was 46 years old. 46. His first car? Age 45. Most people reading this had a car before they had a college degree. Clifton Powell was 45 years old before he sat in a driver's seat of a vehicle he owned. Now, I'm not telling you this to make you feel sorry for him. Clifton Powell doesn't want your sympathy. He never did. I'm telling you this because the distance between where he started and where he arrived is the kind of distance that reshapes what you believe is possible. If he could cross that distance, what excuse do any of us have? The dream and the door. Here is something interesting about Clifton Powell, something that surprises people. He never wanted to be an actor. Not originally, not from the start. The boy from Southeast DC wanted to play football. He had the build. He had the hunger. He had that thing you need, that fire, that competitor's soul. Football was the plan. Acting? Acting wasn't even on the radar. But life doesn't always give you the door you aimed for. Sometimes life gives you a different door, a stranger one, a harder one, and the question is, do you walk through it? In the late 1970s, Clifton Powell discovered theatre, and something shifted. Something deep and fundamental and irreversible shifted inside of him. He found something he didn't know he was looking for, a way to be seen, a way to tell the truth, a way to take every piece of pain and chaos from that childhood and transform it, alchemize it, into art. Pain became power, struggle became story, and the boy who raised himself found his voice. He committed to it completely. A full decade of theatre in New York. 10 years of grinding on stages that didn't always have full audiences. 10 years of honing a craft that didn't always pay the bills. 10 years of saying no to giving up. He didn't migrate to Los Angeles until his late 30s. Most people in Hollywood are already fading by their late 30s. The conventional wisdom says you need to make it by 25, by 30 at the latest. Clifton Powell was pushing 40 when he arrived in LA with his theatre training, his hunger, and nothing much else. And he didn't make significant money from acting until his late 40s, early 50s. Almost half a century of living before the breakthrough came. Let that sit with you for a moment. We live in a world of instant everything, instant results, instant fame. 15 seconds of video and you're a star. We have been conditioned to expect shortcuts, to demand speed, to quit anything that doesn't pay off quickly. Clifton Powell spent decades building something real, brick by brick, scene by scene, rejection by rejection. The streets of New York. But before the roles came, before Hollywood, before any of it, there were the streets. Pursuing his acting dream in New York, Clifton Powell experienced homelessness. Not once, not twice. 4 separate times this man had nowhere to sleep. 4 times the city swallowed him up. 4 times he was left with nothing but his ambition and whatever he could carry. There was one moment, one specific moment, that I want you to really picture. A falling out with a roommate. Just like that, He's out. No backup plan. No family to call. He ends up on the street with his entire world packed into a single Safeway bag, a grocery bag, everything he owned. A Safeway bag and a dream. That is not a metaphor. That actually happened. And he didn't quit. He didn't decide, this is a sign. This is the universe telling me I'm not supposed to do this. This is my answer. He looked at that bag, at that sidewalk, at that city, that cold, indifferent, enormous city, and he kept going. Why? How does a person do that? How do you keep walking when you have nothing? I'll tell you what I believe. I believe it's because he could see something no one else could see yet. He could see himself on the other side of this. Not clearly, not in high definition, but there was a flicker, a stubborn, unreasonable, beautiful flicker of belief. Faith isn't certainty. Faith is moving forward without it. He's scooter, the road, and the voice. When Clifton Powell finally made it to Los Angeles, he was not arriving in a limousine. He was scraping, still scraping. His first vehicle in Hollywood wasn't a car. It was a scooter in Los Angeles, in the land of freeways and six-lane roads and cars that cost more than houses. Clifton Powell was putting around Hollywood on a scooter, trying to make his career happen. And people laughed at him for it, to his face. Colleagues in an industry that claims to celebrate resilience, but often only recognizes success. They laughed. They made comments. They let him know exactly what they thought of a grown man on a scooter who was supposedly trying to be an actor. He rode the scooter anyway. And then one day, something happened that almost ended everything. The accident. A scooter accident so severe it should have killed him. He was thrown. Injuries so serious they required surgery. The kind of physical trauma that rewrites your body and your mind simultaneously. The kind of accident that changes a person. But here is the part of this story that gives me chills. Here is the part that transcends biography and enters something closer to the spiritual. Before he got on that scooter that day, something told him to put his helmet on. A voice. He has spoken about this. A voice. And he believes with everything in him that it was his mother who had been gone since he was 4 years old. His mother who never got to see him grow up, never got to see him fight, never got to see him become who he was becoming. She came back, just in time. Put your helmet on. He listened. And that helmet saved his life. The accident was catastrophic enough without it. With it, he survived. He went through surgery, he recovered, and he kept going. What do you do with a story like that? What do you do with the idea that the mother who left when you were 4 years old, who never got to hold you, guide you, protect you through all those years of hunger and homelessness and heartbreak, what do you do with the idea that maybe somehow she was still watching, still there, still reaching across whatever divide separates us from the ones we've lost? I don't have a logical answer for you. I don't think there is one, but I will tell you this. That story is a reminder that you are not alone. Not any of us. Not ever. The people who loved us don't just disappear. Love doesn't work that way. The industry and its cruelties. Hollywood is a beautiful and brutal place. It rewards certain things, it punishes others. And for Clifton Powell, the industry's cruelties were sometimes breathtaking in their specificity. Colorism. Let's talk about something uncomfortable. Because Clifton Powell has talked about it, and if he was brave enough to name it, we should be brave enough to hear it. He was denied roles because of the color of his skin. Not because he couldn't act. The man can act devastatingly well. But because executives, gatekeepers, people with the power to say yes or no, decided that he was too dark. Their words. Too dark. They worried he would scare everybody. Too dark. In Hollywood. In America. In a country that was built on the backs of people who looked like him. Colorism, the discrimination against darker-skinned people within communities of color, is real. It is documented. It is painful in a way that is almost impossible to fully explain to someone who hasn't experienced it. Because it is rejection layered on rejection. It says, your race was already a problem, but your shade of that race, that's too much. Clifton Powell faced this, named it, refused to pretend it wasn't happening, and kept working. The agency that showed him the door. He was fired by his own agency. You read that right. His representatives, the people whose entire job was to advocate for him, fired him. Why? Because he chose to work on black independent films. Films like The Gospel. Films that told stories from and for the black community. Films that his agency deemed beneath his trajectory. They wanted him on a different path. A more mainstream path. A more palatable path. And when he refused to abandon the stories that mattered to him, they abandoned him. He got fired for staying true to himself. How many of us have faced that pressure? The pressure to become a more marketable version of ourselves, to sand down the edges that make us who we are, to trade authenticity for acceptability. Clifton Powell said no, and paid for it, and doesn't regret it. The lawsuit that nearly destroyed everything. In 2011, Clifton Powell was hit with a civil lawsuit, a sexual assault allegation, false, fabricated, the kind of allegation that doesn't wait for a verdict to do its damage. The case took 4 years to resolve, 4 years, and when it was finally thrown out, when the truth prevailed, the damage was already done. High-profile roles had evaporated, opportunities had dried up. The industry, which had never been entirely welcoming, became actively hostile. He has spoken about the collateral damage of those years with raw emotion. Because false allegations don't just hurt your career, they hurt your name, your reputation, the way people look at you, the invitations that stop coming, the auditions that disappear, the colleagues who suddenly don't return calls. He was punished for something he didn't do, and still, he did not quit. He rebuilt, slowly, painfully, piece by piece. The lessons of a life. Clifton Powell is a man who has lived multiple lifetimes in one body. And from all of that living, all of that loss and hunger and struggle and survival, he has distilled something worth sharing. On perseverance. There is a story he tells about Morgan Freeman. In the 1980s, when Powell was working in theater in New York, he recommended Morgan Freeman for a role. He saw something in Freeman that others hadn't fully seen yet. He advocated, he vouched. That role helped launch Morgan Freeman toward the career we all know today. Now here's what I want you to notice. At that moment, Clifton Powell was still struggling. He was still finding his own footing. He still didn't have the career, the stability, the recognition he would eventually earn. But he took time to lift someone else. Abundance thinking, even in scarcity. He didn't hoard. He didn't protect his small piece of turf. He looked at another talented person and said, "You deserve this. Let me help." That is the character of a man who understands something fundamental about how the world works. What you give comes back to you. On training. He says this to young artists with an urgency that sounds almost like pleading. Get your training. Do the work. Learn the craft. Don't skip steps. A decade in New York theater wasn't a delay for Clifton Powell. It was the foundation. It was the thing that made every role afterward possible. The time you spend becoming excellent is never wasted time. It is the investment that pays compound interest for the rest of your life. There are no shortcuts to the life you actually want. On kindness and ego. He says, be kind, stay vigilant, and put your ego into your work, not into your personality. That last part, put your ego into your work, not your personality. Think about what that means. It means care fiercely about excellence, about craft, about doing the thing you do at the highest possible level. Channel that ambition, that competitive fire, into the output, not into being the most important person in the room. In an industry full of personalities, full of people trying to be seen, that is radical advice. Quietly radical, profoundly radical. Let the work speak, and then let it keep speaking. On giving back, here is the thing about people who have suffered. Some of them become bitter, and you can't judge them for it. The bitterness makes sense. It is a logical response to a world that was unkind. But some people, a rarer kind, they take their suffering and they transmute it. They turn it into a bridge. They say, I know what this darkness feels like, and I am going to reach back into it and pull someone else out. Clifton Powell visits prisons. He visits group homes. He walks into the places where young people are stuck, trapped by circumstances, by choices, by a world that wrote them off early. And he tells his story. He shows up. He shows up because he knows what it means when someone shows up for you. He knows in his bones what it means, because for so much of his life, no one did. The personal cost of public success. I would be doing Clifton Powell a disservice if I only told you the triumphant parts. The man himself has never been interested in presenting a curated version of himself. He has been raw, he has been honest, sometimes painfully honest. His marriage, he has described it as one of his biggest mistakes, a divorce that cost him approximately $10 million. Not just money, years, energy, a particular kind of loss that money cannot calculate. He has spoken candidly about growing up with familial dysfunction so deep that it took him until his 60s, to learn what it really means to love someone, to be present, to be emotionally available, to be the person in someone's life instead of just physically occupying the same space. 60 years old before he truly understood love. That is not a failure. That is a human being doing the best he could with what he was given, which was very little, and continuing to grow, continuing to evolve, continuing to refuse the easy lie that you're just a product of your upbringing and can't change. You can change. He proved it. It might take longer than you planned. It might cost you more than you expected, but you can change. Growth has no expiration date. What his life asks of yours. What do we do with the boy who lost his mother at 4, who raised himself at 7, who slept on sidewalks in New York 4 separate times, who was laughed at for his scooter, who nearly died on that road and was saved, he believes, by a voice from beyond? What do we do with the man who was falsely accused and still rebuilt, who was fired for being himself and doesn't apologize for it, who was told he was too dark and still shone, who didn't get his first car until 45, his first bank account until 46, his first real financial footing until nearly 50, and still became someone? We let it change us. That is the only worthy response to a life like that. We let it change what we believe is possible. We let it dissolve the excuses, not in a harsh, punishing way, not "you have no right to struggle." That is not what I'm saying. I am saying, if this man, starting from that place, with those losses, facing those specific and layered cruelties, if he could still build something, then the door is not closed for you. The door is not closed. It is never closed. To the young person in this room. If you are young and you are hungry and you feel like the world has already decided you don't matter, Clifton Powell is proof that the world's first decision is not the final one. Get your training. Do 10 years of theatre if that's what it takes. Ride the scooter. Sleep in the temporary discomfort. Stay kind even when kindness costs you. Lift someone else even when you are still being lifted. And when they tell you that you're too dark, too loud, too much, too different, understand that those words say everything about their limitations and nothing about yours. Your story is not finished, not even close. To the person who is older and still waiting, if you are 40, 50, 60, and you think the window has closed, if you think you missed it, if you think the timeline you were supposed to follow has passed you by, Clifton Powell didn't make real money until his late 40s or early 50s. He learned to truly love in his 60s. He is still working, still showing up. It is not too late. It has never been too late. To anyone who has been falsely accused or unfairly treated, if you have been judged for something you didn't do, if injustice has visited your door, if the collateral damage of other people's cruelty has cost you opportunities you deserved, rebuild. It is slow. It is painful. It is often invisible work that no one applauds. Rebuild anyway. The truth always outlasts the lie.